Okay. We have 3 new releases this week.
Yes.
I'm debating whether or not to check out that Cabin Fever remake. They made the movie again on the exact same script. It is accessible now. I don't know. Maybe if curiosity gets to me enough, I might look into that. But in the meantime, we have these 3.
So that came out this week as well?
To my understanding, I heard that somewhere. But I guess we'll go with it. It seemed like a reliable enough source. But in the meantime, we're going to start with Deadpool, obviously. So, yeah, obviously, if you came across this video, I'm really probably not telling you anything you don't already know, but, obviously, this pretty much springs from the fact that Ryan Reynolds was in X-Men Origins as Wade Wilson, and everybody thought that casting choice was great, and people really, really loved the portion of the movie he was in that lasted about 3 minutes. And just throughout the whole, ever since that movie came out in 2009, everybody was all, that had so much potential. And then that movie did what it did, and was what it was. So even Ryan Reynolds said he's been trying to get this movie made for 11 years. So that, like, predates X-Men Origins as well. So, this is basically kind of a combination of all that stuff that pretty much everybody wanted, that they got teased with in X-Men Origins, but ultimately didn't get. You have to say X-Men Origins because you used to just call it Wolverine until The Wolverine came out a couple of years ago, and now it's all confusing. But yeah, it doesn't exactly flow off the tongue, X-Men Origins, but that's what we have to deal with now. And I gotta be honest, I understand this is exactly what people wanted. But before I went into this isn't the opinion I stuck with, so don't get mad. I'm just saying this is how I was feeling in, like, the marketing phase. Which was, I get, pleasing the fans, and that's great. That's kind of, what your purpose is. But this movie really, really seemed to be going for that. Like, really, really all out in a way we've never seen before. Because not only do we have this character as he is supposed to be, which is not the bald, sewing the mouth shut, blades out of his arms thing that X-Men Origins made. And not only are we actually getting a Deadpool movie, but he basically is making fun of basically everything, all the stepping stones it took to get to this point, up to and including Ryan Reynolds himself, with such references as the Green Lantern, with him saying, don't make the suit green or animated and stuff like that, because Ryan Reynolds has not had much luck with superheroes prior to this movie. Because we all know, I don't hate the Green Lantern the way most people do, but I can acknowledge that said hate is coming from a certain place. But, yeah, and then just this whole, there's actually a moment where he says it's like his favorite thing, and it's an action figure of the Deadpool from X-Men Origins. So I was a little concerned that was going to be a bit too... pretty much the whole thing was going to be that, and they were going to really, really use it as a crutch throughout the whole process, without necessarily making something of their own, and just kind of sticking to, maybe if we make fun of what the fans hate, they'll, love us. But no, there is an actual movie in here that just happens to have those little jokes in it. And we begin really quite promisingly, and continue as such, which is this opening credit sequence, where instead of it being the actual credits, it is a credit list of character types, which I thought was really clever. And kind of shows that, it's kind of dangerous ground to do the whole setting out to go against cliches and, you know, make fun of cliches and stuff like that. Because typically, you end up kind of being hypocritical and kind of fall into cliches, and most movies that try that aren't very smart about it. But this one, I was easily won over by this, with all that was going on. I was also concerned about the fact that, Ryan Reynolds seems like a pretty nice guy, and he's got that charm about him that people like. But his track record, movie-wise, has not exactly been up to par, I guess. Like he had Buried and stuff like that. But, you know, there was stuff like, what was that last movie he did? Selfless.
Mm-hmm.
The one where he, like, it's all about, we just want to make Ryan Reynolds immortal. That's what the past few movies he's been in have been doing. But, okay, but regardless of that, that's another thing, where you see a movie starring Ryan Reynolds, even a movie like this, it's still kind of, you're not quite sure what you're going to get yourself into. But this was like the passion project of all passion projects, coming from him and the guys that wrote it and the director. So, when we have this big opening action scene, I did have some concerns, but at the same time, you kind of have to think about the kind of world that you're in. Because this is, I probably don't even need to say this, but I'm not all that familiar with the source material. In fact, hardly at all. I've just been told a few things by a few people here and there, and from the little things I've read online. The only thing I knew was that this whole thing about, basically Ryan Reynolds' personality in general is what Wade Wilson's is. And he does the whole fourth wall breaking, and he knows he's in a comic book and stuff like that. The pop culture references, I guess, there's just always been his thing. So, what would seem like over-the-top, kind of trying to reach mass appeal thing, is actually the character being what the character's supposed to be to begin with. Which I'm sure there could be some confusion there as far as the approach to this. Because obviously, is this the first R-rated Marvel movie since... well, I guess the last Punisher would be.
I would say so.
The Punisher is Marvel, right?
Oh.
I'm not totally clear.
Let me check.
Okay. So, yes, because my thought process immediately went back to, like, Blade Trinity. But I was thinking the Punisher was as well. So, now that you kind of are aware of this world that you're in, I was concerned about this action scene that plays out, where it's really big and grand, but very animated looking. But it's kind of, they're still not quite, like, obviously I don't know for sure, as far as which direction this is going to go between these two, but what my thought process is that this movie is kind of so secure in making sure that it is what everyone wants to see. And given that it's this whole, our character is someone who actually talks to us and knows he's in a comic book and does all that stuff. I can't help but think maybe if things are looking a little fake, maybe it's a little bit intentional. Because we're kind of in a fake universe to begin with, because it's clear that he knows he's in a fictional universe. And obviously, another big thing that people hated about X-Men Origins was when Wade goes through with his swords and takes out all those dudes. But because of the way that movie is set up, there is not a single drop of blood spilled as he kills all those dudes. So, this was certainly going to correct that as well. And, yes, this movie has a lot of blood and gore in it. Fittingly enough. There are decapitations, there are people being sliced in half, there are people being stabbed. And there's even my personal favorite during the opening chase, when the dude was flung from the wreckage and into the street sign and just splattered. That's very, very, that was a very tone-setting death. And made you realize, okay, we're in this type of movie, so pretty much anything can happen now. which goes along with that. It really, really helps that it's a movie that kind of embraces the fact that it's in a fictional world. So it can do shit like that, and it's great. Instead of you having to constantly, you know, say, well, you know, physics would not have this happen. That really does not matter. And yeah, okay, so another thing the marketing has been building up is the idea that, another reason this is different from the average superhero movie, if you will, is it's kind of built up as a love story as well. And that is kind of the case, but probably not quite in the way they build it, because they're really using that in the marketing. Like, there was the Valentine's Day billboard, and he's been saying it in all of his interviews about how the movie's actually predominantly a love story. I think most people will be pleased to know that that's not true. Because we have, there is, like, his entire backstory basically is almost like a romantic comedy. But it's in comparison to the whole product, it's a small portion of the movie, but it's still kind of consistent because he has to save her after they kidnap her and all that bullshit. But, so, yeah. He eventually, I like the structure a lot. This whole thing where once we have I guess technically we can say Deadpool's never had a movie. I think the fans like to see it that way. So that's what we're going to go with. We're going to pretend that Deadpool has never been in another movie before this one. So naturally, when you introduce a superhero in a solo movie, you have to have an origin story. But what I really love about the structure here is that they give us what we want immediately while also making it an origin story. The way it's split up with this whole... because this action scene in the beginning actually takes up like the entire first half, and we just keep interrupting it for portions of his backstory until we finally circle back around in the middle. I thought that was a really good way to do it, to kind of... Because obviously in this era where superhero movies are trying to really, really take themselves seriously... actually, even in the ones that aren't taking themselves seriously, like all the other Marvel movies, everything's a fucking origin story. We're probably about to go through that with Spider-Man again. I don't know. But
it's a different origin, though, apparently. It's going to take place later in life.
Whatever.
Not the same origin.
It's like what they're doing with Batman now, for instance. Where, obviously, we need the origin story because he's kind of, Deadpool is a character, obviously, that not a lot of people are extremely familiar with. So, you kind of have to have your origin story, but we're not going to do the normal, we have the whole long thing. It's not like, obviously, I love the movie, but the Batman Begins thing, where you go to see Batman Begins, but it's like over an hour before you get Batman. This movie was not going to do that. We get Deadpool immediately, for quite some time, and then... we say, oh, here's, you know, portions of his backstory while this one big scene is still playing out. So that was a really smart way to do it, and it's definitely a good way to bring in people that don't really know the character prior to going in, like me. Because that's, I mean, you can say, there's the Guardians of the Galaxy thing, where you can pretty much literally make anything, be it a raccoon in a tree in space. But if you slap Marvel's name on it, you're going to make a shitload of money. But they were very smart about the fact that they knew they were probably going to have a hit on their hands, which clearly they do. That was a lot of people for a showing at 1 o'clock on a Friday.
Oh, yeah.
So it's very, very accessible to people that don't know him. It's very... I mean, not only do we get to know all the, like, how he came to be and what his capabilities are, but it also had some instances, like, situations in the movie that answered some questions I had. One of which was, like, yeah, he can repair himself like that, kind of like Wolverine does. But, like, what happens if he gets stabbed in the head or something? Well, sure enough, there's a scene in this movie where he gets stabbed in the head, and that question was answered. So, I appreciate that. No, yeah, and this is, now going back to this whole, he makes references, to the audience, that a lot of which are, like, pop culture related, and related to other movies, especially in the, Marvel and X-Men universes. Because there are the jokes like when he obviously it's also his kind of job to say and kind of project what the audience is thinking and kind of make sure that the audience doesn't get ahead of them. So there's the moment when he goes and Colossus and what was the girl's name again?
She actually has a long name.
Yeah, that's it. The really
Megasonic
cool,
Teenage Warhead.
Yeah, the really cool name he was talking about.
Yes.
When they're in like the X-Men mansion, but they're the only two people we see, and he actually says, "I wonder if that's because the studio couldn't afford any of the actual X-Men." And there's the joke. I mean, it's very, like I said, it's risky to make a lot of jokes like this because after a while, the gimmick can wear really thin. But there's jokes like when he's being dragged away by Colossus and he says, "We're going to take you to the professor," and he says, "Is it McAvoy or Stewart?" So jokes like that are littered throughout this. But the thing about it is, the reason that works is because they were able to keep the movie alive with it. Like, I was kind of waiting after a while for it to kind of die off. And obviously not all of the jokes hit, because it's basically, they're so rapid fire. Pretty much there's like kind of one joke after the other from beginning to end. But definitely enough of them hit to make it to where the movie never kind of falls when it's up. So yeah, and there's always that thing with playing with expectations, whether it's you can't see some things coming, but then there's other things that go in other directions you might not think so. Just toying with the whole superhero cliches thing. Because obviously the whole thing about his character is that he's not even really a superhero. And he confesses that, yeah, when he kills people, that's just straight up murder. That's just the way it is. I also like I'm assuming this is what the comics did as well, obviously, I'm not sure, but I like where the origin of his name comes from. That's something I'd never even really thought about.
It makes sense if you really think it over.
Honestly. So yeah, this is definitely getting very, very critically acclaimed, and obviously fans are just, all over this. And yeah, I don't like love it unconditionally by any means, but I do really like it. And I do like this whole approach and the fact that it didn't really... I'm a little concerned about a sequel because I felt this movie kind of kept the whole object of it alive enough to where it didn't wear itself out as it got to the end. So now once a sequel comes along, we gotta go the whole feature length again to make sure we don't go off the rails and kind of lose this vibe that we have. But it's already being written, so maybe they already had something in mind and they were able to kind of... So hopefully we kind of stay in this flow as we keep going and it doesn't lose sight of itself. Our second movie is Zoolander 2. Another movie I really wasn't quite sure about. Because I do love the first one. The first one is one of the funniest movies out there.
Exactly.
I remember when I was... Right before my 11th birthday, it came out. And I remember seeing it and thinking it was hilarious, and then getting a lot more stuff as I grew up with it. So this is obviously another one of those delayed sequels. The first one was 15 years ago. But at the same time, this is also it was also potentially promising. Because there was a lot of stuff about, it just kind of seems perfect to see what Zoolander does amidst the selfie generation.
Right.
Because that's, because when like this whole... When you see, like, social media and Twitter and all that stuff, narcissism is all over the fucking place coming from almost everybody now. And that's what Zoolander is basically. He's made of narcissism. That's his whole thing. So it's very interesting to see him in this world and what can come of that. And the supposed goldmine of jokes you would have. And we start off where the first one left off with a humorous joke about I'm not sure why this was necessary, because obviously there's really no reason, but they went ahead and killed off Matilda anyway. They killed off Christine Taylor.
What was she doing?
And the joke, of course, is that Derek thought, when we see his building, at the end of the first movie, his Center for Kids Who Can't Read Good and Want to Learn to Do Other Stuff Good too. He thought that they should make that building out of the materials they made the model with. So the fucking thing collapsed and killed everybody.
Of course it did.
Including her. And disfigured Hansel, supposedly. I didn't care for the Hansel wearing the mask joke because it was totally clear where that joke was going from the get-go. At least they didn't drag it out too long, though.
No.
But, the whole time you know exactly where that joke is going. So this time around, everything is... okay, look. I'm kind of embarrassed to even reference this movie, because it's basically me admitting that I've seen it. But, I couldn't have... Something that kind of worried me, obviously, in regards to quality, is that, people are starting to murder, these, like, pop idols. Starting with Bieber, in the opening scene, which you could tell was, like, clear, like, you know...
That guy has really great parkour skills, and not Bieber.
It was clear that they were trying to please a certain group of people by having a prolonged scene of Justin Bieber being gunned down.
That's the first scene of the movie, too. That makes it even better.
But anyway, going on this idea that our plot is now that the people kind of that were in his profession are being offed one by one, is basically the plot of Deuce Bigalow 2.
Yeah, basically.
Oh, God. Let's try to not remember that. But, yeah, I lost myself for a second. Zoolander 2 fucking made me lose it for a second. Okay. And obviously this is all linked to, Mugathu's big return, from prison. But he's also teamed up with Penelope Cruz, since he needs another female counterpart, obviously. And obviously there's another plot where he has a son. Well, obviously we know he has a son, but his son was taken away from him in this whole montage at the beginning, and he has to go find him. And then there's a whole other plot involving... there's a lot happening in this movie, I just realized that. Just now. First thing I guess we should talk about is certain appearances in here. We have new cast members and we have old cast members, obviously. The first being, if you want the cameos to be a surprise and that's your thing, you might want to go ahead and stop here, but I'm just going to keep going. Obviously, one of my first instincts was to say, well, if we're going to bring back somebody, the first person you've got to work on bringing back is Billy Zane. That's just, you just have to do that. And sure enough, in one of our opening scenes, there he is in all of his glory.
Got his Netflix and everything.
Yeah. And he's basically the one that brings Derek and Hansel back into their story. We have the returning joke about Hansel's orgies, which include a few people, but most notably Kiefer Sutherland, playing himself. I wasn't quite sure for the first half, but then finally there was a moment where he was leaving and Hansel was saying, Kiefer, no!
Kiefer, no!
So, yes. And Hansel apparently got Kiefer Sutherland pregnant. We're never told how that works, but that's the joke.
That doesn't end well.
There's one involving, they're going through the airport and they think their fame has returned, but in reality it's Susan Boyle standing behind them. I guess she's still a big thing, but that felt a little dated to me because I haven't heard about her for a while. I mean, I think she's still out there doing her thing, but you don't really...
but there could have been something else.
Maybe it's an over there thing.
An over there thing? Since this is BAFTA weekend, after all.
Yeah, and continuing on with Hansel's orgies, there's, you'll notice as I'm going through these progressively, they start working less and less. Because they kind of just feel like, you know, easy laughs or easy reactions or whatever. Another person amongst Hansel's orgy is Susan Sarandon, who, of course, Susan Sarandon being amongst an orgy, she's going to make a reference to the Rocky Horror Picture Show you can probably see coming from a mile away. Ariana Grande's in there in bondage. I don't even think... Did she have a line? I think she said one thing, and then she put a ball gag in her mouth.
Pretty much.
And then there was... Yeah. Before we continue, let me go back to Billy Zane.
Why not? Why not go back to Billy Zane?
Because I want to talk about the idea that there's a lot of... When you're doing a sequel, especially based on an extremely popular movie, that has quotes out the asshole amidst pop culture now, there's the idea of what are going to be the new jokes and what are going to be the recycled jokes. And when they recycle the jokes, are they just being lazy, or are they building off it and making it funnier than it was originally? That, in my experience, thinking about it, is not often successful. I think it's rarely ever reached bringing a joke back in a sequel and making it bigger and better than it originally was. Because a lot of the time you just look like you're beating a dead horse. Like they even use the same song during the orgy. Mm-hmm. They do all that, and of course bringing Billy Zane back. But the funny thing about Billy Zane and Zoolander, the first one, was that he was just kind of there and then he was gone. Like he kind of had that moment where he came back and was like trying to talk Derek out of a walk off, but then he was just gone. I kind of felt like he's still here briefly, but I felt like they were milking it a little bit. So there was that. And then there's, they bring back the Orange Mocha Frappuccino montage, only this time it's gelato. And yet there is a joke that made me laugh that leads to. That also kind of goes in with Zoolander finding himself amidst the selfie craze.
It works really well.
But then there's the returning joke with when Mugatu's back with his assistant, and he drinks the latte and then spits it on him, and then they have that moment where they kind of stare at each other awkwardly, where it's like there's like an attraction, but then there's not. It's that exact same moment, only it's dragged out, which is a moment I never really even like acknowledged in the first movie. Like it was always there, and I was like, that's bizarre.
How old were you back then? That's the thing, you may not have realized it.
I've seen Zoolander like 50 times, though, throughout that 15 years. It might be more than that, I don't know.
Yeah, so have
I. So the thing, I actually caught it again on TV last year, and I hadn't seen it in a long time, and it really held up after all that time. But no, there's just kind of that. A lot is very reliant, but then there's stuff that's they kind of, you know, bring in like there's an Uber joke and there's the Netflix stuff with Billy Zane that's kind of just thrown in there to say, hey, Zoolander's in this world now.
Yeah.
But then there's stuff that's kind of smart, like when we have, I don't know what in the fuck, but I just kind of had to stop and think about what had happened in my life to bring me to this point that I was looking at this. But Fred Armisen plays an 11-year-old boy in this movie that is a child's body with Fred Armisen's head superimposed on it.
It's so weird.
Was that like a joke?
I don't know.
Was that
seems like an inside joke.
I don't know. But anyway, they're talking to Fred Armisen, and of course, we know of, obviously, back in 2001, everything was getting smaller.
Right.
Like, the smaller it was, the more futuristic it was. So, Zoolander had the really, really tiny phone. But now you'll notice in today's technology, things are getting bigger again. So there's the joke that he has his tiny phone, and Armisen says, wow, that's so retro, and pulls out his fucking thing.
And he looks like Deep Roy in the Willy Wonka remake.
So, that's a funny joke in there, but I was a little too flabbergasted by what the fuck they were doing to Fred Armisen.
It was weird. I was like, that's Fred Armisen, but why?
Because I saw his face and I heard his voice first, and I really like Fred Armisen, so it was kind of like, hey, Fred, what the fuck? But okay.
That's a great piece of dialogue for someone just flipping on the video.
And then we have Cumberbatch. Given the controversy he started, I thought he was going to have a bigger part, but no, it's just another cameo. When he showed up in the trailer doing his part, everybody got real pissed off and offended. but that's pretty much the extent of it. And the issue here is, I get that it's a joke where it's like, you know, do you have a hot dog or a bun? But it didn't really feel like, once we got into his character and he was doing the whipping and the flying, it was... if you haven't seen the movie, that sounds really weird out of context.
It really does.
But yeah, he's just whipping and flying and
being really creepy.
I was just kind of thinking, I think the extent of the joke is that it's Cumberbatch.
I think it is.
But also it's also kind of an interesting casting choice given the Alan Turing.
Yeah.
But the thing about it though is I wasn't really feeling anything other than, this is just weird. Like, I didn't want to laugh at it, and I didn't really want to say, wow, this is outrageous, so much so that it's admirable. It was just like, wow, this is so fucking weird. That happened a lot in this, actually. So, yeah. But continuing on to the cameos, Willie Nelson just randomly shows up because it's like, you know, hey, look, it's Willie Nelson.
He's smoking weed.
Because weed, funny, still, after 50 fucking years or so.
Willie Nelson is the male Betty White.
And then there's this scene I really don't care for, where now we're just like the cameos in the first movie made sense,
right?
Because there was like Christian Slater and Cuba Gooding Jr. on the red carpet of the show.
Paris Hilton was at the fashion show,
and then like Winona Ryder was hanging out at the place with Billy Zane,
right?
Bowie, his tremendous. We'll get more into that in a second because they have a Bowie replacement now.
Mm-hmm.
But all the cameos kind of had their place. And when you saw that, it was like, well, that's an interesting... Like, Winona Ryder, what was that? But, I mean, I know the Reality Bites connection. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, in the context of the movie, it's like, well, that's interesting. He's just randomly hanging out with Winona Ryder. But it was like an actual scene.
Right.
And it didn't just kind of feel gratuitous. I mean, it was gratuitous, but it didn't really feel like it. It was just kind of like, there's an interesting face to see in this. And like I said, right after her, Billy Zane appeared. But here they are absolutely... Most of them have absolutely no reason other than to just be a cameo. Take, for instance, this scene. This scene felt like something in some kind of spoof movie. Some unsuccessful spoof movie. Where Hansel goes outside and he's trying to figure out who he is and he's on a rooftop. And then across from him on the other rooftop is Derek doing the same thing. And then we turn and then Katy Perry is there doing the same thing, and then this is when it gets real fucking annoying. On the other rooftop is Neil deGrasse Tyson, which kind of makes sense because he's on a rooftop and there's a telescope there, but at the same time,
it feels really weird.
It's so anytime he shows up in something that he's not supposed to be in, like Cosmos, it's somebody milking a fucking joke. It's milking the fact that he's popular right now, and the internet will go crazy because he showed up. And he does it again at the very end for no reason. He's there just to be there so people can react to the fact that it's him, because he's popular on the damn internet. That's really... I mean, not to fucking degrade what the guy does, but it's just... When he shows up like this, that's all it's here for. That's it. And I just find it really annoying. But then we have, there's also the moment where, Derek's going through the whole, to get to Mugatu's cell, and there's all the people that have been jailed, and there's MC Hammer, and then there's, John Malkovich.
Yeah, it's weird.
Okay, I mean, it's always nice to see Malkovich, I'm not complaining. It was just, okay then. But yeah, okay, now we've kind of circled around to Mugatu, and I will say this. I know I bash Will Ferrell a lot.
You didn't hear.
I know that's just kind of my thing, but I really love Ferrell as this character.
Oh yeah.
Something about this character just kind of kills me. And he's, weirdly, despite the fact that he's a comedic character, and it's just Will Ferrell being over the top, he makes a really good villain. And obviously they do have this joke. I was concerned because he was doing the whole he's under the suit thing and he looks prison-like. He had also changed his voice, which I thought was weird. And I was like, that's not the voice he's using. Did he totally forget how to play this character? But once he reveals his true form again, he goes right back into the normal character, and it was nice. I liked seeing this character come back. But that's late in the movie too.
Oh yeah.
Because then we have Kristen Wiig is here now because she's
She looks like Miley Cyrus in this movie.
The weird thing was there is a purpose for this. It turns out, but throughout the movie, it was very much bothering me that Kristen Wiig's performance is exactly that of Mia Jovovich's in the first movie. To the point that it was really aggravating me throughout the whole movie. It's like, are they even trying? Like I said, there is a purpose for that, but it's not going to stop it from bothering you throughout the whole movie. Obviously, Justin Theroux comes back as the evil DJ. I love that is his name. And I love the whole joke about, he tries to pose as the headmaster with the wig and the robe, but he's still clearly wearing, like, his t-shirt and his chains, and it's clearly the evil DJ from the first movie. And then it's a big surprise to Derek when it's not. And I love that even the thing in his mugshot, it just says Evil DJ.
DJ, yeah. I like that.
That's just his name. So I like seeing him return too.
Right.
Now, as far as another person I like to bash a lot is Owen Wilson. But I have admitted before a few times that I love Owen Wilson in the first movie, in Zoolander. Oh, yeah. He plays that, just the way he plays that character is so kind of, he's brilliant in his stupidity. But I was not feeling that magic here with him. Like, it was kind of, seeing Derek and Ansel return after so much time. There was never really kind of, it's kind of weird I felt that way about Mugatu, but not Derek or Hansel. And they were kind of, I'm not sure what exactly was the difference, but there seemed to be a clear difference in, I loved Owen Wilson in the first movie, but here it just kind of felt like normal Owen Wilson.
Maybe it's so much time has passed, potentially?
I don't know, but and then there's the whole, I mean, there are still jokes in there that are funny, like, the way they're in, like, they never leave they don't leave the U.S. at the start when they, like, go to their separate places, but they build them up to be, like, these exotic locations, but it's still, like, New Jersey and Malibu.
It was funny.
I thought that was kind of funny. But then there was something I didn't really care for, which is, you want to try to expand on your jokes from the first movie, but, I don't, if you must repeat them, fine. Make sure you expand on them and make them at least bigger and better, or whatever. Or at least not less funny. But a fatal error they made here was, obviously one of the big jokes throughout the entire first movie was that every single one of Derek's looks is exactly the same. From La Tigra to Blue Steel, all that stuff. It's all the same look. That's the whole joke.
Right.
And nobody notices except Mugatu. That's it.
That's scary, by the way.
But then there's like a whole segment of this movie where it turns out they are different very subtly. And we actually go into that. And I was like, wow, you totally fucking killed one of the funniest jokes from that movie. Because that's the whole point, is his whole thing about has everyone taken crazy pills? He's the only one that sees that it's the same one. But whatever. And yes, as I said, there were a lot of cameos in the original movie, but the one everybody remembers is Bowie. Playing himself as the judge of the walk-off.
Yeah.
And we do have another Bowie-style entrance, complete with the name coming up and the song playing. Only this time it's Sting.
Yes, it is.
Which could be funny, but they never really, I don't know, they never really did anything that I found particularly inspired with that.
I think they made it obvious, too.
I don't know. Well, they talk about him in like the very opening scene because it's Bieber trying to get into Sting's house. There's like a monument of Sting at the top.
There's a lot of Sting throughout the entire movie.
So yeah, like I said, with Bowie, it was just the one scene. It was great. Everybody remembers it, and then it was gone. But Sting has to Sting is a plot device.
Yes.
And has to periodically come up throughout the movie. I don't know.
I liked how it was subtle how they introduced it, but even though most people missed it.
Well, the thing, though, is that obviously with these delayed sequels, there's always going to be worry, and that worry mainly stems now and forever from Dumb and Dumber 2.
Oh my god.
So it benefits from the fact that we saw this after we saw How to Be Single.
Oh yeah.
And it also benefits from the fact that Dumb and Dumber 2 has set the bar so fucking low for movies like this. So yeah, there are funny things in there, but for the most part, I think it's a lot of just kind of recycling and kind of... There's just never at any point did it feel necessary. Usually there's that moment where you're like, you know, there are moments in there where you're like, okay, I'm kind of glad that they made this. It's cool to see these characters again and stuff like that. I totally could have lived without this. So... Yeah, and there's really no... It's definitely not, like... The first one was... Obviously, the first one has, you know... Is still popular today, 15 years after it came out. Because people remember the scenes in it and the lines and can quote it like crazy and all that. Can quote it from beginning to end. Because all those lines are just in there. I'm struggling to recall lines.
It wasn't really a line movie. It was more like in the moment type of movie. Sometimes you don't really think about lines in certain movies. You just think about the movie itself.
Movies like the thing that it's not just, you know, like, you know, can you quote, because then Apatow would be the king of fucking everything if it was all, oh, let's see how many quotes we can get you to say to your friends and shit. But it's as far as a movie sustaining, like, being memorable, without, you know, quotable lines and memorable scenes, this is not going to do that. This movie will never, ever, ever withstand 15 years. Because a lot of these jokes that are good now will probably be dated by then. So, yeah. That's... Like I said, obviously there's jokes that are dated in the first one, but there's still such a charm to it. That this one is really, really lacking. And it just kind of feels... I mean, I had hope because Stiller is still behind the camera. This does not feel like a movie that was made by the director of things like the first movie and The Cable Guy. And Tropic Thunder. This does not in any way feel like it's from the director of Tropic Thunder. There is just not enough fucking clever... And Justin Theroux worked on the script like he did for Tropic Thunder. So... Yeah. I mean, it could have been a lot worse. I'm glad it wasn't. But I had trouble hanging on to it, but there's still some funny stuff in there, so it could have gone worse, for sure. Like so. Our last movie is How to Be Single. This is one of those movies where you know it from the title, because they're trying to treat it like there's some self-help book or something. This all-knowing guide to relationships and the dating world and all that other bullshit. And they do that thing where they have this they're very, very knowledgeable about the dating scene, but they're also real cynical about it too. Because they've, you know, been through all this stuff and they can do, like, all the guys can do the sexist stuff and all the women can do the, we're slutty but we're just doing our own thing kind of thing. And I'm not saying stuff like this isn't okay, because people, you know, do their thing. That's just what they do. But the way this movie portrays a lot of the things in it, the reason this is an issue is because it's trying to be, like, real and relatable. But the only trouble is that this movie is not really set in reality. Which is the problem a lot of movies like this have. I in no way felt like this movie was set in the real world. Not in one scene. Well, no, there's one segment, but we'll get to that. Much later. In the meantime, we have our 4 women who populate this. We have Dakota Johnson, Rebel Wilson, Alison Brie, and Leslie Mann. we have Dakota Johnson, who is dating Nicholas Braun, who you probably know as Ponytail Derek. And her sister is Leslie Mann, who is a doctor, who maybe wants a baby, but maybe doesn't. And then, completely unrelated, we have Alison Brie, who just wants to stay home on her laptop all day in her sweatpants. And then we have Rebel Wilson, who is Dakota Johnson's new friend that works at a firm with her. And they become best friends forever in the span of a few hours. And they go out, and Rebel Wilson's basically the one that kind of, you know, pulls her into this lifestyle and says, you know what, just don't even do the relationship thing. Just, you know, drink all the time and fuck everybody and talk about the rules of dating that we randomly came up with. And then we have this bartender character. This bartender is a guy... This bartender might be a guy you know in real life. He's that guy that basically can and will fuck anything that comes around him that he can get his hands on. And he has such a sleaze factor that somehow he is able to coat in this kind of pseudo-charm that he can do this and nobody hates him for it. And he just goes about life. But, and he's real cynical about one-night stands. This is a guy that is so against having a girl around for more than one night. He does not keep food in his house, so they can't have the excuse that they're staying for breakfast. And they basically can't drink or hydrate themselves because he has gone through the trouble of turning off his water so that they have reason to leave.
Real winter ladies.
In the morning. And this guy is our kind of all-knowing guide to what women really want and stuff like that. I don't know. It's not for me to judge, but whether you think of this guy... But that's the thing, though, is this is inside the real world, supposedly. We're actually inside the movie world. And with this guy, who is very cynical about women in general... and absolutely refuses to have any kind of connection with one outside of a one-night stand. He's the guy that has all the different contacts in his phone, up to including women and their mothers. And the girl next door.
Literally, it says that. Yeah,
from across the way. And he's so cool he doesn't remember their names. They're put in as their character type in his phone. But this is not the real world. This is the movie world. Do you think this guy's gonna learn the error of his ways and fall in love and get a comeuppance? Sorry. I hope I don't come off too bitter talking about this. It's just, this movie is so... The most aggravating thing is that it's trying to be real and relatable. And this is just not that world at all.
No.
Because then we have... it's a movie about being single. Filled with moments of instantaneous romantic connections. I don't know. So, we have pretty much everybody at some point sleeps with the bartender, but then they have their own stories they branch off into. We have, obviously, Dakota Johnson she decides that she wants to be, you know... just go around and just kind of have flings at a moment's notice, just because that's the single life, and that's, you know, what you do, I guess. But at the same time, she wants Ponytail Derek back after dumping him. She dumped him so she could just fuck around. That was the whole point. But now she's changed her mind. She doesn't want to fuck around anymore. But lo and behold, he's seeing somebody now. So what is she gonna do? She's gonna fuck the pain away as much as she can in hilarious, wacky situations or something. And then we have Alison Brie, whose character is so confusing. Okay, well, first, the most confusing thing Alison Brie does in this entire movie is that she's trying to get her Wi-Fi working, so she hangs herself out the window with her laptop and accidentally drops it, and it drops out of her window, off of a roof, and onto the concrete below, breaking. For some reason, we're supposed to pretend this scene never happened, because for the entire rest of the movie, she still has that laptop. And she's always on it. I don't know. I don't know either. Maybe her laptop had Deadpool powers. So, and of course, she's sitting at the bar one day, and there is our bartender, fresh off his most recent fuck, and there is Alison Brie, looking like Alison Brie, a conquest. So, how he approaches this is, he sticks his nose where it does not belong, basically looks over her shoulder at her computer and scoffs at her, and basically judges her by her life decisions, and basically spews whatever bullshit happens to be in his head at the time. The people in this movie do not have that thing where it's like, this is what I'm thinking about this person, and it's probably going to piss them off, and it's really not something people say to other people, but I'm just everything that comes into my head is just going to flow right out of my mouth, and this is how we're going to banter. And sure enough, this is how this goes. In the real world, this dude probably would have been brushed off immediately. Number one, for trying way too hard. And number two, for just being very, very kind of intrusive in a very uncomfortable way. But because we're in movie land, that's just how it is. She just sees this as perfectly normal and goes right along with it. I guess it depends on who you are, depending on which of those worlds you're in. But next we have let's go into Leslie Mann's story. Leslie Mann's story is probably she's the actress here I like the most. I really like Leslie Mann. I don't know. Maybe I can kind of get why some people don't take to her, but I really like her. I think she's really charming and can be really funny. And here, she is that character, as I said, that maybe she wants a baby, but maybe she doesn't. Because her job is basically to deliver babies. That's what she does. So, there's that whole crisis of, is she going to or is she not? And then there's this scene I cannot explain, where she's left alone with the baby of one of her patients. And this scene is basically just them kind of having a stare down. And of course it's her, saying like, oh, I don't want a baby. Oh, babies are disgusting. Oh, babies, no. But then as the scene progresses and the baby keeps staring at her, she basically decides right off the bat that she's going to have a baby and that she wants one. I really wasn't quite sure if that scene was supposed to be like awkward and funny, or if it was supposed to be like serious, because this movie actually starts to do that after a while. This movie really starts to take itself seriously and really wants to be this kind of statement on the certain lifestyles, both of these. The relationship life and the single life. And we eventually come to a conclusion that this movie has no idea what the fuck its message is. Yeah, maybe it's condoning a little of one and a little of the other, but just the way it presents itself, I had no idea what the fuck it was trying to get us to think. But whatever. So, continuing on with this Leslie Mann story, this is the kind of plot we're dealing with. This is the way these characters interact, and the way these characters think. Naturally, it's all about hitting that. I don't know. Is this a movie about being single or hitting the dating scene? I don't fucking know.
I don't think it knows, honestly.
Okay. Because it just switches back and forth throughout the entire thing. So the title is confusing. But anyway, Leslie Mann's brilliant plan is, I'm going to get a sperm donor, and I'm going to get myself impregnated. And then, after a bit of drama and a bit of trouble and dragging out the storyline just a little more than it needed to be, here we are. Like, there's the scene where she's like, she takes the test and she's not, but then right after that she takes the test and she is. Just dragging out that runtime. Could we not have just gone straight to her finding out that she is? Whatever. But, now that she is impregnated, exactly like she wanted, now is the time to hit the dating scene. This in no way will cause trouble for anybody at all. I promise. So, if that's not a done-off plot, where do you think it goes now? You've seen a movie in your life. You've probably seen a couple of movies in your life. Where does this storyline go? Do you think she meets a really nice guy, a really nice, good-looking young guy, a perfectly chiseled face kind of guy, and then they both really like each other and they both are really falling for each other? Do you think she's immediately going to say, well, if we're going to have a relationship that's going to last a while, I should probably tell you something about myself. Something that's going on. But no. No, we're not going to do that, because we need conflict. We absolutely, positively must have conflict. So, let's just not tell the fucking guy. He's not going to notice this happening after a while. No way is he going to be able to tell. But no, it's, oh no, I'm going to tell him, And do you think there's going to be a scene where he finds out before she can tell him herself, and there's a big confrontation about it? Of course there is. But that's not all. This plot is not done being dumb yet. Here's the thing. Now, I understand creating conflict for a story's sake, but fuck you. Because what we have here is, yep, she's showing now. And he hasn't seen it before now. In this store. He catches her in a baby store. That's how he finds out. And it just so happens that she's showing now. So, there's this big confrontation. And he's like, you know, he thinks it's his, of course. So he's like, oh yeah, awesome, yeah. And of course, you know, maybe it'd be cruel, but she could just go with it. That could solve this conflict. Like I said, not the best idea, but it would solve the conflict. Not her inner one, but the outer one for sure. But nope. She immediately has to say, not yours. Nope. But my issue here is, good on you. You told him it wasn't his. The hard part's over now. That's good. But, while she was so immediate to say, it's not yours, she takes her sweet-ass fucking time telling him it's a donor and not another person. Well, not technically a person, but you get what I mean. So, what is going on through these characters' minds when they make these decisions? So, I don't know. But anyway, and yeah, do you think he's going to accept it and he's going to help raise it and everything's going to be great? I don't want to spoil anything. And then lastly, we have Rebel Wilson. Rebel Wilson, once again, as I said about Ryan Reynolds, I'm sure she's very nice. However, there's just, I liked her in Pain and Gain. She was still kind of doing the same thing, but, it just kind of, there are so many shitty things that came together for Pain and Gain and made that movie great. Right. It's a weird thing, that movie. But it just works so well. But apart from that, Rebel Wilson has been playing this character basically ever since, the first Pitch Perfect. And she will not do anything else. I don't know if she refuses to. I don't know if studios refuse to let her do anything else. Or if her agent just says, no, trust me, just do this shit all the damn time. I don't know what decisions go into it, but she's basically going to be playing this person forever, I think. So, and it's even really kind of going back to her little one scene in Ghost Rider. Remember when she was the girl in Ghost Rider that Eva Mendes was interviewing and she was talking about what she saw? She was making the fire noises. I guess she's technically been doing this for 9 years now, if you want to go back that far. So, she is the best friend who loves to party and loves to screw everything in sight and has all the bad dating advice and says all the wacky things. Like, there's the whole, she's walking through the firm and she's like, Jewish guys run this place, Jewish guys, Jewish guys. I guess that's supposed to be edgy or something. And then, with no context, she just starts bringing up midgets. Because that's funny. Because, you know, if it's her, she has a fan base now. And if she so much as says anything, you don't even have to pay attention to what she's saying. But if she's just talking, there will be a crowd out there that this movie's made specifically for that will just eat it right up. Not even really even listening to what she's saying. If she just throws out random words like Jewish people and midgets, they're done. You've done your job. You've served your purpose. And then there was the moment when they're in the park. And just for no goddamn reason at all, she's like, I must date it in albino. These are the jokes. This is what this movie has to offer. She dated an albino once. That doesn't have any context to anything. But, you know, great. Wonderful. She's speaking. It's hilarious. There are a couple of scenes, that fucking thing I love so much, where it's the whole, it's like I said, it's Apatow syndrome, where it's, you don't have one-liner that comes and goes. You have multiple takes of every one-liner you came up with for one joke, and you just play them one right after the other, like you're playing a gag reel, or an outtake reel. But it's in the movie. It is within the movie. And I think like every time she said one too, there was a cut. Like you would see in an outtake reel during a credit scene. Whatever. This is this movie's idea of jokes. Okay, and there are a couple of things here that just don't even fit. Let's go back to Alison Brie. So she has her, you know, her thing with the bartender, who she, you know, confides in so much despite the fact that he's clearly a piece of shit, but that doesn't matter. And then she finds another dude, and she has a storyline there. But, like, once again, How to Be Single is about pretty much anything but that. But the thing about it is, once she gets into a tiff with a guy, I think it was the bartender, I can't be for sure, but so many characters went in and out of this movie I didn't give a fuck about. But there is a scene in this movie that is insane, where she is reading to children, and she has a psychotic episode where she starts to say his name unconsciously while she's reading the story. To the point that she doesn't even realize she's saying his name. And then she starts to freak out and go insane and have an episode and start cutting off her Spanx in front of this group of children. Turning into a complete and total psychopath. The weird thing is that this is one scene. Her character has never ever been like this before, and she never does anything like this again. She is totally and completely normal by the movie standards, except for one scene right in the dead center that is completely unprovoked, where she is a total psychopath. And it's just in there. It has nothing to do with anything. So, another thing is we're introduced to another character who is Damon Wayans Jr. Who, like I said, for a movie called How to Be Single, this movie is filled with just instantaneous romantic connections. She meets him once in passing, Dakota Johnson, and then she meets him again, and they're in love. And we see this scene pretty much in real time. She sees him again after a long period of time, after meeting him basically in passing, and like 30 seconds later he shows her a Christmas tree and she's making out with him. And then there's another jump in time, and they have been together for quite some time. But this is basically when the movie tries to start going into serious territory for the rest of its runtime. For like a straight 45 minutes. The entire last 45 minutes of this movie comes after what probably could have been an ending. And this plot with Damon Wayans Jr. is really, really dramatic. I have no idea how in God's name it ended up in this movie. This is a different movie.
Yeah.
When he's in it.
You flip the channel.
Because it's him and his daughter, and then it turns out his wife's dead, and he won't talk to his daughter about her mom, and it's something he's keeping up bottled inside, and it's made him a very bitter person while he's trying to be this loving single father. And he's got to come to terms with the idea of opening up about this love that he lost to his daughter so that she can know who his mother is. Where the fuck did this come from in this movie? Because that's heavy. And it's played off completely dramatically.
Yeah, and it should be.
And he's really good in this.
Yeah.
Where does this fit in? Because they push her out of the story. He's like, I can't do this shit with you. You're not her mom. And he gets really defensive about it and just throws her out of his life. But then we kind of keep going with that story after she's out of the picture, when it shouldn't matter anymore because her story is what the movie is. Now, mind you, I'm kind of glad we got a break from her bullshit to watch this actual movie happening, if only for like 5 minutes. But there was like a break, at least, where it was like, there's something here, but at the same time, this movie just has no idea what it is. It doesn't know what its message is. It doesn't know what its tone is. It doesn't know what its genre is. It doesn't know what a fucking joke is. I don't know. It's, you know, Rebel Wilson acknowledges various groups of people. This is this movie's idea of a joke. This movie is devoid of any fucking thing to say when it thinks it's being real knowledgeable about multiple subjects. I don't know. And weirdly enough, the direction is like really flashy. Like there's like when they text, it comes up on screen like we're in fucking 50 Shades of Grey or something. It comes up on the screen whenever she's looking for her Wi-Fi. There's the whole thing about the peanuts. What the fuck were the peanuts? Fuck the peanuts. And then there was the whole, like, there's just, like, I don't know, little animations and shit. I don't know. Oh, naturally, this is another one of those movies where Dakota Johnson's, like, making out with dude. And she's like, don't worry, I'm not going to be one of those cliche girls. It's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure this is going to fall into hypocritical territory.
Welcome to your typecasting.
Yeah, so, any movie, like I was just fucking talking about this. When a movie is going to call out and say, we're not cliche, you probably are. Because it's fucking cliche to even do that now. So, okay. I just don't know. Is that about it? There's one laugh in this movie. The movie's an hour and 50 minutes. That's 10 minutes shy of 2 hours. And they really, really pack that shit in. There's one laugh in this movie. When Leslie Mann's future boyfriend almost drinks the candle.
Yeah.
I thought that was...
That guy was funny, though.
Because I saw him pick it up, and I was like, does he know? And then they made a little tiny bit out of it, and I was like, that's funny. Because they just it happened, he acknowledged it, and then they let it go. And I was like, that was kind of funny, and very, very brief. That's nice.
How jokes should work in movies like this.
This movie doesn't know what a joke is. That's the closest thing they came to one. A dude almost drinking a candle that he mistakes for his glass.
You do realize this video might as well be a theme. You get it, don't you? We talked about Wade Wilson, we talked about Owen Wilson, and now we're talking about Rebel Wilson.
Of course. The only thing we're missing is Castaway.
Yes.
Well...
That's funny.
Okay, you'll see.
You'll understand why we're laughing at that now.
Okay, we're done here.
Alright, so...
I feel like there's more to say, but... Just... Yeah.
Yeah.
I really fucking hope people don't see this as like a... Like, take this movie seriously as the guide it sets itself up as. Because this is just unhealthy.
Someone should be sitting there with a notebook making notes about what
I said, even if you're like, you know, gullible and impressionable enough to do what this movie tells you, you're gonna be your own yo-yo. You're not gonna know what the fuck to do. So yeah. Please just don't.
I'm pretty sure I know where you're going with this, but I'm not positive, so I'm about to find out, just like everyone else is. Star amounts. Deadpool.
3, 2, and 1.5.
That makes it easy. So next week will be, oh god, Race, Risen, and The Witch. Yay.
It'll be interesting to see what all that hype about The Witch is about.
Yeah, I'm super excited about The Witch based on what I've heard about it. And the week after, we finally get Eddie the Eagle.
Oh, is that when that is?
Yeah, it comes out the week of the Oscars. How appropriate. So that being said, continue to watch the segments here on Pop. Tomorrow will be the Baptist video with AJ, Ashley, and myself. Sunday, Brand New Verses, Your Cryptic Comment is Communication. And Monday is Gaming with Ash, the Raw Popcast, 11:30. And Wednesday, of course, Wednesday Wrestling Popcast. Thursday, Sip and Snack Friday. AJ's movie reviews talking about the 3 movies I just talked about. And that weekend is Fastlane. So we've got the Oscars coming up soon. Your Oscars prediction will be next Saturday. That's a guarantee right now. So, that being said, thank you guys and girls out there for watching. AJ, any parting words?
I think that's it.